After hearing of his mother's uncontaminated desire for transcendental realization, the Lord thanked her within himself for her questions, and thus, his face smiling, he explained the path of the transcendentalists who are interested in self-realization. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Devaruti has surrendered her confession of material entanglement and her desire to gain release. Her questions to Lord Kapila are very interesting. For persons who are actually trying to get liberation from material entanglement and attain the perfectional stage of human life. Unless one is interested in understanding his spiritual life or his constitutional position, and unless he also feels inconvenience in material existence, his human form of life is spoiled. One who does not care for these transcendental necessities of life and simply engages like an animal in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating, has spoiled his life. Lord Kapila was very much satisfied by his mother's question because the answers stimulated one's desire for liberation from the conditional life of material existence. Such questions are called apavarga vardhana. Those who have actual spiritual interest are called sat, or devotees. Satam prasangat. Sat means that which eternally exists, and asat means that which is not eternal. Unless one is situated on the spiritual platform, he is not sat, he is asat. The asat stands on a platform which will not exist, but anyone who stands on the spiritual platform will exist eternally. A spirit soul, as spirit soul, everyone exists eternally, but the asat has accepted the material world as a shelter, and therefore he is full of anxiety. Asat Grahan, the incompatible situation of the spirit soul who has the false idea of enjoying matter, is the cause of the soul being asat. Actually, the spirit soul is not asat. As soon as one is conscious of this fact and takes the Krishna consciousness, he becomes sat. Satangrati, the path of the eternal, is very interesting to persons who are after liberation, and his lordship Kapila began to speak about that path. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, this verse says, Maitreya said, after a hearing of his mother's uncontaminated desire for transcendental realization, the Lord thanked her within himself for her question, and thus, his face smiling, he explained the path of the transcendentalists who are interested in self-realization. So here we see that Devahuti is making a confession. She's confessing that she is in material entanglement and her desire is to gain release from it. So every one of us should follow the example of Devahuti, and we should confess to our material entanglement and desire to gain release. And the questions that she poses to Lord Kapila are very interesting for persons who are actually trying to get liberation from material entanglement and attain the perfectional stage of human life. Well, not everybody is interested in this. Therefore, they avoid hearing the Shastra spoken by genuine devotees. They prefer to sleep and then wake up a little bit later on and then rush to work and drink a lot of coffee to stay awake and uh, basically be always, let's say, late for doing things because they're not regulated. They finally get regulated for working, but not for spiritual advancement. And this is a big shame because so many people have the qualification of understanding Krishna consciousness, but because of their attachment to sense gratification, they engage in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, but not really trying to become Krishna conscious. Therefore, they end up becoming bound up by the illusory material energy that ties them up in different ways so that they have no time for spiritual life. No, in spiritual life, devotee has a real interest in freeing himself from the clutches of Maya and then helping others also. So uh, Devahuti is an example of that. She has surrendered her confession of material entanglement. So that's point number one. We also, by hearing spiritual knowledge, we should confess of our material entanglement and then desire to gain release. And it says, her questions to Lord Kapila are very interesting for persons who are actually trying to get liberation from material entanglement and attain the perfectional stage of human life. Unless one is interested in understanding his spiritual life or his constitutional position, and unless he also feels inconvenience in material existence, his human form of life is spoiled. Well, if we don't feel any inconvenience in having a material existence, then we're not going to ask questions like Devahuti is, and we will not uh, surrender our confession of material entanglement, and we won't really desire to gain release. So there are many people like this. They're in the sense, good people, but they're really entangled in their life of sense gratification. And they cannot understand what's wrong with that. Uh, Sometimes people say, well, look, I don't hurt anyone. And I live independently. And if someone needs help, I might offer them some money. Uh, but my life is very satisfactory for me because I have no pain and I am living in a nice house and I have a nice car and my family is a good family, etc. Well, that's called living in a fool's paradise because uh, ultimately existence in the material world is full of misery. It is not a nice place to be. And unless we understand that, we'll always be trying to adjust things so that we don't suffer and we don't have any, let's say, stress in material life. That, of course, is impossible. So, therefore, we're living in a bubble of illusion. And to break that bubble of illusion, we need the help of bona fide devotees. Now, that doesn't mean that devotees are negative people. When you explain things as they are, that's not being negative. That's just telling the truth. And then when you situate yourself on the path of progressive Krishna consciousness, uh, then that is not a negative thing. It's very positive. But first, you have to understand the untenable position of material life. Uh, Ultimately, everyone is going to get old, get sick, and die. And then there are many, many examples of that around us every day. Therefore, we should understand, oh, well, it'll never happen to me. No, it will happen to me also. And what is that? Well, uh, becoming, let's say, illusioned and wasting all our time in sense gratification. And then sometimes people never wake up from that illusory type of life, unfortunately. And then when they approach death, they suddenly realize that they wasted so much time in their life on mundane things, whereas they had the chance to become Krishna conscious and make tangible spiritual advancement. But they avoided it, thinking that their style of life, good eating, good sleeping, good mating, was the summum bonum of human achievement. And believe me, it is not. It is exactly like animal life. On the other hand, when one comes in touch with genuine devotees who are happily engaged in devotional service, then they understand that there is an alternative to simply eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. We all have to do those things, but we don't have to become addicted to them. We have to become regulated for our material needs, but not, let's say, uh, controlled by them. Uh, Everybody has the need to eat, to sleep, to mate, and defend. But there is something more than just those four things. There is the attempt to become spiritually enlivened and engaging in devotional service. So we minimize the eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and maximize our interest in hearing about Krishna and practically engaging in Krishna's service. Now we have become a person who's enlightened and not oppressed by material nature. The material nature is always going to be overwhelming and confusing. That's why there's so many psychiatrists in society today because people get confused and they become bewildered and they need help to try and not be stressed out so much and get help to put themselves on a spiritual path to understand the relationship with Krishna. So here it says that Devahuti has surrendered her confession of material entanglement and her desire to gain release. Now, how many people have surrendered their confession of material entanglement and desire to gain release? Not so many. Most people are very satisfied with their life until they get really sick or they get cheated or some there has some kind of a real upheaval in their life happens, and then they start asking questions. Why is this happening to me? What have I? What am I missing in my life? I don't want to suffer like this, or I don't want to be cheated, or I don't want to live in a bubble of illusion. So then a person begins to ask questions how to get out of that type of, let's say, difficulty in life. So uh, Devahuti surrenders her confession of material entanglement and her desire to gain release. Many people never surrender their confession of material entanglement, and therefore they never really seek to get release from it. They're happy being in this illusory state of mind and living in a very superficial way in the material world, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So the difference between an animal which eats, sleeps, mates, and defends, and a human being is that the human being can understand his or her relationship with God, and not only understand it, but function in it or act in it. So this is what's happening to an enlightened person. They come in contact with genuine devotees. They hear the talks of the devotees. They understand that their present position is in material sense gratification. And now they take up devotional service to free themselves from the illusory, false ideas of trying to find a place in the material world where they will be eternally happy. There is no such place in the material world where we will be eternally happy. But there is a place where we can achieve eternal happiness, and that is in the life of devotional service to the Lord. It's not going to be through any material process. It's only through a spiritual process of surrendering to the Supreme Personality Godhead with the help of devotees and now engaging every day in hearing, chanting, dancing, feasting, and above all, uh, associating with really serious devotees who follow the regulative principles of spiritual life. So there's four things we should never do, and there's four things we should all. We should not eat meat, gamble, have illicit sex, and intoxicate. And we should always chant Hare Krishna and uh, hear the Shastras spoken by genuine devotees and eat only prasadam, give up all kinds of uh, horrible foods like, people eat, like fish and crabs and all kinds of horrible things. Uh, One should have a sattvic life where they limit their eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and they especially stay away from horrible things like fish and liquor and so forth. And they have a sattvic life where they like to drink milk. They like to eat only clean things. That means no flesh. They like to eat vegetables and fruits. And by the way, there are types of vegetables and fruits that should be avoided also, but most of them are good. And in other words, a devotee organizes his life to chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and avoid sinful activities, but above all, avoid sinful people, people who are uh, addicted to eating meat and fish and things like that, addicted to mundane activities, mundane thoughts, and mundane, let's say, aspirations, and uh, stay away from people who are addicted to these bad habits. So one is recognized as a devotee when they avoid the association of nonsense people and accept the association of spiritually advanced people. That's how to understand the devotee. Okay, so here the example of Devahuti is very interesting. She surrendered her confession of material entanglements and her desire to gain release. So that is a, what do you call it, a very important awakening in life when a person surrenders his or her confession of material entanglement and desires to gain release. And the only way to do that is to associate with elevated or genuine devotees of the Lord. Uh, Therefore, we can make our confession to those type of persons and then uh, desire to gain release. And then her questions to Lord Kapila are very interesting for persons who are actually trying to get liberation from material entanglement and attain the perfectional stage of human life. Yes, we should all have questions. There's so many things we don't know. And unless we ask questions, we will never know. It's difficult to understand our entanglement in material life. In other words, we have to get help from outside. We can't figure these things out on our own. So if our hands are tied, we need the help of someone whose hands are not tied to free ourselves. And we always have to go outside of ourselves to get help to become Krishna conscious. People say, well, I'll do it on my own. Well, they can do some things on their own, but they're not going to become free of birth, death, old age, and disease on their own. They have to surrender to a bona fide devotee or devotees and get their help in how to uh, readjust their whole thinking, their whole uh, existential life to becoming, let's say, always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. This is the solution to all problems. Uh, Now, most people never remember Krishna because they have forgotten Krishna completely. But when you become a devotee, now every day you're remembering Krishna and not forgetting Krishna. So, unless one is interested in understanding his or her spiritual life or his or her constitutional position, and unless he or she is also feels the inconvenience in material existence, his uh, his or her form of life is spoiled. So if people say, well, listen, I'm very happy the way I'm living, I have a nice job, a nice family, I have a nice car, and I eat nice food, and so I'm not interested in chanting Hare Krishna. There are a lot of people like that. Then when tragedy happens, they get bewildered. How did this happen to me? everything was going really well. And now I'm feeling a lot of stress and I have problems with my body. I have problems with my mind. And I'm losing my uh, friendship with so many different people. They become, completely bewildered. This happens to everyone. And to avoid such a thing, we should have a spiritual life where we have positive uh, association with nice devotees. And every day we're hearing more and more about Krishna and how to engage properly in devotional service. That is what's going to save us. We never can learn enough about Krishna, and we never can learn enough about how to please Krishna. That should be our main vocation in life. And especially learning something new every day. That should be our, let's say, goal. We never are going to learn everything because we are jivas. We're not the supreme personality of Godhead. So that means we have a life of discovery every day, and that invigorates us. It's not the same old, same old, same old every day. There's something new that we learn every day if we hear very seriously and ask questions and engage in the practical devotional service. So, this learning something new every day is the excitement of Krishna consciousness. And in mundane life, uh, it's the excitement of discovery of something new is not there. They're doing the same thing over and over again every day: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And they think, well, this is real life. Well, it's life, but real life is this. It also has discovery every day, learning something new about Krishna and how to serve Krishna and love Krishna. That is the life of the devotee. That's why Prabhupada has written so many books, and by carefully reading the books and purports, the verses are there, but to read the purports of Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada said, my purports are my spiritual ecstasies. So if we engage in hearing and reading and meditating on Prabhupada's spiritual ecstasies, we will also become spiritually invigorated every day. So we need that invigoration. We need that, let's say, inoculation of Krishna consciousness every day to become immune to Maya. Otherwise, Maya can catch us. How does Maya catch us? Well, there was once a man, he uh, was always saying, uh, uh, he was always saying every day, repeating the same thing, that glory to the Lord, and uh, I I hate, or I hate, yeah, I hate the devil. So the devil heard this. Every day he was saying that. So then the devil put this man in the state of complete illusion. Uh, he uh, One day, every day, the man would go to work. He had a shop, and when he put his key into the lock of the shop, he would say, "Glory to God, and I hate the devil." So this was like his mantra every day. So the devil became really upset that every day he was being cursed by this man. So what did he do? He put a donkey in the neighborhood of this man. And the man noticed this donkey. Every morning he'd go to, go open his shop, and he was seeing this donkey. So he was very interested, how come the donkey is always there? He must not belong to anyone. So after, a couple of weeks of seeing the donkey every day hanging around the shop, so he went and actually looked at the donkey, and the donkey looked at him, and he took it home with him. And he used the donkey to ride on him to come to work. He would send the donkey to his house to get lunch for him and bring the lunch. And now he got really attached to this donkey. So one day, he took the donkey to there was a water fountain type of thing, for people who have horses or donkeys, they can drink water. And while the donkey was drinking water, he saw the donkey go into the faucet and disappear into the faucet. Now, donkeys are big, right? He couldn't believe it, and he looked carefully at the faucet, and he could see the ears of the donkey inside the faucet. They're moving a little bit like that, And he was shocked, and then he went, in the state of shock, and telling everybody that the donkey went into the faucet. And people said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, the donkey's in the faucet." And people said, "He's going crazy, right? The donkey is in the faucet, right?" So he kept saying this over and over again to people, and then he became what you would call, seized by this illusion, and eventually it caused him to not be functional. Every time he would go and open his shop, and someone would come into the shop, and he would say, "The donkey's in the faucet." Mm. And then people thought, he's crazy, he's going crazy. So this affected his work, it affected his family, everything, and then pretty soon, he was not even able to function. He just kept saying the donkey's in the faucet. So, so after some time, he had to close his shop. It affected his family. They were, not able to have enough money to buy food and things like that. They had to get help from their relatives. And so this was a big problem. So one day, his relatives and friends, the men, they sat down with him and they had a long talk. And they said, "Look, as long as you say that the donkey is in the faucet, you're not going to be able to function. Now, okay, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. You saw the donkey go into the faucet. The faucet, small, thing like that, and donkeys are big. And we're not going to argue with you. But if you want to take care of your family, if you want to be able to live and maintain your business and all that, you're going to have to stop saying this and just go about your normal business and maintaining your family and just we're not going to argue with you. We agree that the donkey went into the faucet, right? But you have to stop talking about it and take care of your family. Otherwise, you're going to lose everything you have. So they finally convinced him to stop talking like that. But every day he would go look at the faucet, and when no one else was looking, right? And he'd bend his head to look into the faucet, and he would see the ears of the donkey. But now he learned not to talk about it anymore. So, and why did this happen? Because every day previously, before he was talking about the donkeys, uh, he's in the faucet, he would say, "Glory to God," and I hate the devil. So the devil got upset because this man was saying it every day. So then he put him into this state of illusion. And he created this donkey, and the man became attached to it because he was seeing it, just walking around and like not belonging to anyone. And then he started he used the donkey to go to work and come back from work. And so eventually he became very attached to it. And one day when he took the donkey to drink some water, the donkey went into the faucet, which is, unbelievable. And and then he became bewildered. And now he was telling everyone the donkey went into the faucet. So everyone thought he had gone crazy, right? But eventually, because it affected his business, it affected his family and everything, his well wishers sat him down and had a long talk with him. And they said, "Look, we're not going to argue with you about the donkey. We also accept the donkey went into the faucet. Right? But if you keep talking about this," they said, "you're going to lose everything. How are you going to feed your family? Everyone will think you're crazy. So please now stop doing this and just focus on, going, opening up your shop and doing the business and being able to, take care of your family." So finally, after a long time, they convinced him and he stopped saying the donkey went into the faucet. But still, he would every once in a while go and look into that faucet. You have these, you know, uh, you have these water uh, faucets for animals, right? Horses and donkeys and things like that. So he went every once in a while when no one was looking, when it was dark at night. He'd go and look into the faucet, and again he would see the ears of the donkey. But this time he kept it quiet. He didn't say anything. So these are illusory tricks that take place when people are uh, basically living a not only a mundane life, but a life where uh, they have very, very negative thoughts about other people, about uh, life in general. They always find uh, something to criticize. So sometimes people like that they go crazy. They get fixated on something that is not really true, and they they go off the rails. They're not. It gets so bad that they're not functional anymore in society. So these are like old time stories, but these old time stories have some figment of truth in them. So the story of the man who said the donkey went into the faucet. Well, this is a story uh, in the Middle East, but it shows how one can get fixated on something illusory and completely uh, become or less crazy, and it happens to people. So that's why being regulated in spiritual life is very important. Then, uh, by that regulation, hearing about Krishna every day, that's the panacea for all these, let's say, illusory things. The panacea means the healing. the healing uh, uh, medicine, the healing medicine from illusion is to always chant Hare Krishna and associate with genuine devotees and avoid non-devotees. Uh, that's the way a devotee is recognized. They avoid the association of non-devotees and they take the association of genuine devotees. Now it's going to be very difficult for them to start to believe illusory things. Why? Because they're hearing Shastra every day and they're associating with people whose lives are dedicated to chanting and hearing about Krishna. Krishna is the only real substantive reality. Everything else that is temporary is illusory because it will eventually disappear. So, and that leaves a person completely bewildered. So, uncles and aunties, they disappear, they die. And beloved persons, they die. So this is bewildering eventually for people. And when they see that the people that they love, they get old, they get sick, and they die. And then they realize that's going to happen to me also. So for some people, it becomes, like uh, paranoia to feel that, I can also die. Uh, but yet, uh, for a devotee who is hearing Shastras every day, who's associating with actually good devotees, they understand, look, there's no reason to be afraid of death because the soul is eternal. So you're never really going to die. The only thing that dies is the temporary body. Now, this is important because otherwise we can develop a fear of death and always be in anxiety, especially when you get older. But there shouldn't be any anxiety because the soul is eternal. It's never going to die. This is the first thing we should learn, and we should be convinced of this, that we have an eternal soul, and the soul can never get old and never die. Uh, and then cultivate the knowledge of Krishna consciousness, which validates this belief that we have an eternal soul and it never gets old, it never gets sick, and it never dies. So it is not possible to understand this unless we have the association of genuine devotees and we're regularly hearing the Shastras spoken by devotees. So that's why uh, says here, Devahuti has surrendered her confession of material entanglement and her desire to gain release. Her questions to Lord Kapila are very interesting for persons who are actually trying to get liberation from material entanglement and attain the perfectional stage of human life. Unless one is interested in understanding his spiritual life or his constitutional position, and unless he also feels inconvenience in material existence, his human form of life is spoiled. One who does not care for these transcendental necessities of life and simply engages like an animal in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating has spoiled his life. Lord Kapila was very much satisfied by his mother's question. Yeah, if you don't have questions, you're not going to get any answers. That's why I always say, are there any questions? And then there's this very profound silence. No questions. Well, if there's no questions, then there's no answers. And so, uh, there's something missing then. We should have thousands of questions, you know. Uh, It's just like a child. A child has a lot of questions, right? You say, Dad, what is this? Dad, why did this happen? Dad, uh, what kind of people are these? So kids have 100 questions. Sometimes parents get tired of it, hearing all those questions. But the child is inquisitive. There's so many things that the child doesn't understand, and they ask questions. If you muzzle the child, then you thwart their ability to advance spiritually in life. Sometimes I asked my dad one day. I never forget this. I think I was only about 12 years old. One day I was with my dad, and I said, it came into my mind. I said, Dad, every day we wake up, we shower, and we go in the kitchen, sit down, we eat something, and then I go to school, and you go to work, and I come back, have lunch, and I go back to school. Then I come home and do some homework, and I eat something, and I go to sleep, and I wake up, I do the same thing again the next day. What's the purpose of all this? And he looked at me and smacked me really hard in my face. Said, don't ask stupid questions. That was like, I was like shocked. And I never asked the question again. Now, I didn't get the answer to that until I met devotees. That's like, 10 years later, or 15 years later. But, kids ask questions, and first of all, they just follow whatever the parents say. But after some time, they say, well, why are we doing this exactly? Right? And if the parents are not willing to answer that question, then it's very frustrating for a child. Then he'll go outside of the parents to other people and ask that question. And then they'll get all kinds of different answers. So it's better that the parents give the answers, but they happen to know the answers themselves. Yeah. So this whole question of parenting is a very big issue. And without Krishna consciousness, if one is trying to parent their child, they're going to make a lot of mistakes, you know, uh, big mistakes, and mislead the child. You know. So we have to be very careful if we want to rear children, bring children into this world, and then educate them properly. First, we have to be educated. So before attempting to have a baby, we should first be educated in Krishna consciousness and follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness as our culture. Culture is how people do things, right? So we should learn the culture of Krishna consciousness. That's what Prabhupada was teaching. And if we follow and practice the culture of Krishna consciousness, then we'll avoid making many, many mistakes that normal people make because they're not actually educated. They've been taught false things. Just like someone becomes convinced that they're not a male, they're a female. Right? It happens. And now they try to be a female instead of a male. Right? And there was this one lady in our temple. She didn't live in the temple, but she was coming all the time. And it was a man who started acting like a woman, and he even went through these operations, hormonal operations, to become a woman. And so we didn't stop this person from coming to the temple, but he or she uh, was complaining that the operation didn't really work well. So that was the main thing he was always talking about, or she was always talking about. we sort of tolerated this because this person was trying to learn something about Krishna consciousness. But you can see, you this person was stuck on this concept that the operation they went through to change them from a man to a woman did not succeed, and so this person wrote a letter to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada answered the question. He said, "Look, decide what you are. Are you a man or you're a woman? But make the decision, and then stick to it. Don't argue about it. If the operation didn't work. Just stick to it. Make your decision what you are, and now stick to it." That was his answer. Otherwise, you go crazy. They're always complaining about, well, the operation didn't work. Maybe I have to have another operation. This was the main consciousness of that person. So anyway, sexuality is it's fluid. In many stories in the histories, there's stories uh, of people who were a male for 6 months and a female for 6 months. And when they were a female for 6 months, they had babies also. You can read it in the Shastra. You know, so this sexuality is a fluid thing, but in normal life, someone is born a male, so they should remain a male throughout life, and not get caught in this false idea that, oh, I'm actually a female in a male's body. Uh, then it'll put a person in a let's say an illusory state of mind. Whatever we are, we should just function in Krishna consciousness as we are. Right? Not get this idea. Oh well, I'm actually a woman. I'm not a man. And then they go through operations, and then they say the operation didn't work that well, and so forth. Uh, so they become bewildered. In fact, why don't you look up? Maybe there's some statistics about this. People who change their gender. Uh, how many of them maintain that change of gender through life? Oftentimes, they at one point they decide that they made a mistake and they want to go back to what they were before, but they can't because they had an operation that mutilated their masculinity or feminine, uh, you know, uh, state.
The studies report about 90 to 98% have chosen gender, whatever the change, they're staying with it. They're not looking for detransition.
So 98% are happy with their sex change.
Yeah, and then about that, maybe up to 10%, 2 to 10%, they want to change back.
Okay. All right. Well, there's some statistics. That's why Prabhupada told this one devotee that sent him a letter and said, he is a man, but he wanted to be a woman. And he was complaining to Prabhupada that he was not allowed to use the ladies' toilet or the ladies' bathroom. Of course, it was like shocking for the ladies to see this man walk into the bathroom. So, and Prabhupada said, "Look, make up your mind what you are, and then stick to it. If you think you're a woman, okay, then you act like a woman the rest of your life. But don't go back and forth, um, and just put yourself into stress and other people in this church. Because, it's very stressful. A woman is in the bathroom and in comes this man, you know, and the man is claiming that he's actually a woman. So it's very, very stressful for women to be in that type of situation. All right. So fortunately, we don't have that so much here. But in Berkeley, or better known as Berkeley, there are a lot of things like that happen all the time. And we had to deal with it. It was very difficult. But anyway, if people make a decision and stick to it, and then it's easier to deal with them. But if they're, like changing their minds back and forth, then we can't really deal with a person like that because it's too stressful for the women in the temple. Uh, one day they want to be a man, next day they want to be a woman. Now they're arguing, why we're not letting them use the ladies' bathroom, and it becomes like crazy. Okay, so are there any questions? This is a wonderful purport. Devahuti has surrendered her confession of material entanglement and her desire to gain release. Her questions to Lord Kapila are very interesting for persons who are actually trying to get liberation from material entanglement and attain the perfectional stage of human life. So that is a very important statement because it says her question to Lord Kapila are very interesting. So that should be a big hint to us that we should have questions. But real questions, like the one Devahuti is asking to Lord Kapila. Without question, there's not going to be any answers. So we'll never really get educated. So a person who is uh, interested in freeing themselves from the cycle of birth and death, they should have many questions. Okay. So unless one is interested in understanding his spiritual life or his constitutional position, and unless he also feels inconvenience in material existence, his human form of life is spoiled. There are a lot of people who say, I'm very happy with my life. It is nothing really you can tell me that I need. I'm very satisfied with my life as it is now. Well, it's hard to talk to people. So, but Maya is on our side because Maya will, at one point create some tragedy for that person, and then they wake up. They start coming to the temple and say, "Why did this happen to me?" But many times, people will tell you, "Look, please don't preach to me. I don't need it. I'm very satisfied with my life." There are a lot of people like that. So does that mean that we have to go through a period of suffering in our life to wake up to spiritual truth? Uh, answer is yes. Uh, Otherwise, a person will go through their whole life eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and not ask any questions, and then think that death is part of life. You know, and they sort of adjust their mind that okay, well, I have to die, I have to die. And then there are people that choose to die earlier because they might have some kind of congenital disease and they want to commit suicide, legal suicide. In other words, uh, they have to push a button themselves to kill themselves. So the button is like a inoculation of some poisonous uh, substance, into their bloodstream, and then they die. So that's what happens nowadays. You can go and ask to commit suicide. Then you have to, get the validation of a doctor that says, well, this person is in the right state of mind to commit suicide. and then you can legally commit suicide. You have to push the button though. The button gives you an inoculation of some poisonous thing, and then you die. So why don't you look that up? Legal suicide.
Euthanasia.
Euthanasia. So
Yeah, you have to get the validation by a psychiatrist and a doctor to be able to kill yourself.
this euthanasia is the practice of intentionally ending a patient's life to relieve their suffering. The word comes from the Greek words eu means good and thanatos, death, good death. The goal of euthanasia is to provide a patient with a relatively good death instead of a slow, painful, or undignified one. In euthanasia, a doctor administers a lethal drug to the patient. The patient must personally request euthanasia, and the request must be made without undue influence from others. Euthanasia laws vary by country, and it is illegal in most countries. However, assisted suicide is legal in some countries, including Austria, Belgium, Canada, Germany, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Portugal, Spain, Switzerland, parts of the United States.
Certain states.
Yeah, and all 6 states of Australia.
Washington is included.
Is included?
It says Oregon, Washington, California.
All I think
I think Oregon
all
started.
the liberal states will be there. any.
All the liberal states.
Yeah, I think they'll be there because gives people choice, right?
Give choice
Don't
for everything.
give choice for everything.
Confusing.
It makes up completely.
So there are states in the United States that don't allow that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of states don't allow it.
Yeah,
A lot of
I'm sure all the red states. But,
states.
Who is along with Oregon, Washington, California, Vermont, Colorado, Maine, New Jersey,
all the West Coast.
and New Mexico and Hawaii have laws permitting physical assisted suicide, often referred to as death with dignity.
Death with dignity. Death to become a ghost.
One time, one of my neighbors, his wife, he had selected like this for his wife.
She was sick.
Yeah, he was going through with some cancer or something, and after surgery and became like very tough. So they have decided, and I was shocked when I heard this. I couldn't say anything, but yeah, that's what they did it like.
Well, if the person is suffering physically and mentally, it's because of bad karma. And it's better that they go through that suffering in this life. In the next life, they don't suffer like that. But if they artificially commit suicide, it's not the end of the suffering. It's going to increase the suffering in the next life. They don't understand that. They think, you see, these are misconceptions. People think, when you die, that's it, you're finished. There's nothing.
So that's why they try to end that suffering now.
That's the
They think
material.
it's done,
Yeah,
but it's not done.
Materially, they are calculating suffering is finished.
Yeah, exactly.
The same thing is suicide also, right? You'll think, okay, I'll die at the end of my suffering, but that is not.
That's the truth. But they're convinced that, if I commit suicide, there'll be nothing.
They're convinced with it.
And they're not considering that ghost into the situation because they have to finish their life as well.
Now, ghosts, then they're in a bigger trouble because now there's no way you can gratify your senses. So you're extremely frustrated. But because there's no knowledge of the soul, they think the soul is made up of some material state of development, but it's not. It's not material. The soul is not material. So therefore, they think that they can commit suicide, and then there'll be nothing. But that's not true, because you have an eternal soul. So this knowledge of the soul, that what is like if you talk about morality, morality is the same, for the Muslims and for the Jews and for the Christians, thou shalt not kill, etc. But when you talk about the soul, there are a lot of differences, and about what happens after death. There's a lot of differences, from one religion to another. But the truth is that you can never really die. You just change your body. And therefore, committing suicide is not a solution. In fact, it makes things worse. You try and convince a person, they're so hell-bent on killing themselves. But suffering is part of life. You can't have a suffering-free life. There's going to be suffering because the body is temporary. But nowadays, there's so many medicines and things you can take to stop your pain. Right? There's a lot of pain medicine nowadays. However, why is a person addicted by pain? It's because they're making mistakes in their diet and their way of life. If they have a sattvic life, they'll avoid most, let's say, pains and sufferings. And if you have a Krishna conscious life and you actually follow the rules and regulations, then no one's ever going to be free from pain, but it'll be very less. And what you can actually tolerate without taking drugs and so forth. As soon as you take drugs for pain, then that changes your body's state and your mind state. But look how many painkillers there are on the market. There's a lot. Some people have to take painkillers every day. So that's not good. But you can't convince them. They're addicted to these painkillers, which are basically drugs that put you in an illusory state. Now, pain is a big, let's say, business. Big, big business. Nobody wants to feel pain. But actually, if you tolerate pain, and eventually you will heal yourself. Of course, there's some things that you can't heal, but most of the time, if you tolerate pain, it'll go away. If it's congenital, in other words, you're born with some kind of bodily state that is, is painful all the time, you can get used to it. You can get used to it and not complain about it. Are we ever going to be pain free? No. It's just something that you have to tolerate. But if we live a Krishna conscious life, then most of the reasons why people have pain go away. people have pain because they're doing things with their body that is illicit, that they shouldn't do. You know, so just taking painkillers is not the solution. Solution is to give up all types of artificial painkillers and make yourself healthy by walking, by chanting, and so forth. Especially this walking. Walking is very important. So even for Prabhupada, he was having some health problems, of course. He had a heart attack and diabetes. So he heard, he called the doctor, and after the doctor, uh, he had a stethoscope and he put his heart and here and there. And afterwards, he said, you should take a walk every day. So after the doctor left, Prabhupada said, I think he's right. I should take a walk every day. So he started walking. He would take his morning walk every day, and it was a very brisk, he would walk very fast also. And that became part of his life on the advice of this doctor. He said, you should start walking more, And Prabhupada said, I think he's right. I'm going to start walking more. Yeah.
Most of the time, simple solutions are simple.
Yeah,
like,
very simple.
but regulated. Like, that's the
Yeah. Well, I try and walk every day. I look forward to it. But if you're sitting, like this on the computer all day long, it's not very good for your health. It's much better to take a long walk, breathe the clean air. So you have to walk somewhere where there's a lot of trees, and that should be part of your daily routine. And while you're walking, you can chant Hare Krishna. So if you get out of the habit of walking, eventually you'll have problems, health problems, because there's not enough circulation of the blood. Like someone is like watching television for 6 hours a day. Eventually, and they're drinking beer and eating hot dogs. Eventually, or very quickly, you're going to have health problems. But if you, are chanting and dancing, people say you should exercise, but we exercise every day by dancing. Kirtan. So if we are, dancers and singers, Krishna consciousness, well, you're healthy. You don't have to artificially walk. You're jumping up and down in the temple. So that's a type of exercise, right? And then you're bowing down. That's another exercise. It's like the Muslims, they bow down a lot. That helps their health. Okay. Okay, so now, yes.
Yes, Chaitanya Mataji, you want to ask the question?
Yes, Maharaj. So, what kind of vegetables should we avoid while we are in Krishna consciousness?
What kind of vegetables should we avoid? We should avoid the poisonous vegetables and fruits. There are vegetables that are not poisonous, and there are vegetables that are poisonous. So, and of course, meat eating and so forth. So your question is, what kind of vegetables should we avoid?
Yeah, are there any kind of vegetables we usually eat in our diet?
That we should stop eating.
Well, you should avoid vegetables that are poisonous.
What are they? Which ones are
Do you have
poisonous?
any specific example?
Okay. Do I have any specific examples.
Are the ones that you avoid.
Well, there are a lot of things that are poisonous in nature. Like, for example, a slug. If you eat a slug, you will die, but it'll be a terrible death just by eating one slug. And you see slugs all the time. Yeah. And this one boy, he was dared to eat a slug, and he ate it. And you can look it up. You can see.
We have seen that.
Yeah.
Very terrible.
So, yeah, there are certain things you can put into your body because they're poisonous. So, what are poisonous vegetables you're saying, or
Yeah,
Fruit.
specifically vegetables. I mean,
What avoid? Onion, garlic, avoid. And are there other?
Means mushroom.
Mushroom.
Mushroom we don't eat.
I just asked ChatGPT poisonous vegetable,
yeah,
and then it says rhubarb leaves.
Mhm. That's
Apparently,
true.
the stalks are edible, but leaves.
not the leaves. Yeah,
Are
Leaves.
mushrooms poisonous? Mushrooms?
some of them, not all of them.
Then there's green potatoes.
So, therefore, if you don't know which mushrooms are poisonous, you shouldn't experiment.
Like in the store, they sell mushrooms, Maharaj. They'll say, don't eat those mushrooms.
Which ones? The ones in the store?
Store, yeah.
Well, you see, a mushroom usually grows in darkness. So therefore, it's not considered to be sattvic food.
Hmm.
There are some mushrooms that don't grow in darkness, but still better to avoid mushrooms because there are poisonous mushrooms. So you don't want to make a mistake.
So apparently, potatoes that turn green,
Yeah, you shouldn't eat those.
those are toxic.
Yeah.
And then tomato leaves and stem. Only tomato
Fruit.
fruit. Raw kidney beans. The kidney beans have to be cooked properly, otherwise it has some toxin. Elderberries.
What?
Something like elderberries is some kind of berries, I think.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah, sometimes you see trees that have these little berries. Some of those berries are poisonous. You better not experiment.
Maharaj, even if not poisonous, from an energy standpoint, right? Like you don't want to eat something that's not that way. We know we should avoid onion, garlic, maybe mushrooms. Are there other vegetables? They may not be poisonous, but try to avoid in your everyday diet if you want to be more conscious or you want to be more conscious.
People argue and say, well, onion and garlic, they're medicinal.
Right? We get that all.
And they're vegetables. So why are you saying we shouldn't eat them? Well, because they're not sattvic, that's why. We should only eat sattvic foods.
this is interesting. Spinach and chard. They both contain oxalates, which can contribute to kidney stone formation in susceptible individuals when consumed in excessive amounts.
Have you ever had kidney stones?
I know people.
I mean, some people.
Yeah.
It is in excessive quantities.
Yeah, I mean, it's good regular quantities, but
Yeah, I never had a kidney stone, thank God.
Mhm.
But there are people that get kidney stones all the time. They have to be very careful what they eat. And it's very painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check it out, maybe we can see vegetables which are not sattvic. So that also like there's different people say different things. That it'll be good to understand.
Well, you know, rhubarb. Uh, okay, so you want to know which vegetables are
Not sattvic.
Not sattvic.
There's onion, garlic, leeks, shallot, mushrooms, eggplant, radishes, hot chilies and peppers, pickled or fermented vegetables, turnips.
turnips are
Mhm.
not sattvic.
Because they grow under. Yeah, it says like radishes, turnips are considered too pungent and are associated with tamas and rajasic.
Associated with what?
Tamasic and rajasic qualities.
So all radishes are not.
Basically, because Krishna says anything that is pungent is not considered. So because of the taste of that, it is not technically considered.
Mhm.
I mean, this is in the purest sense.
Well, what about something like an achar?
Like a pickle.
Yes.
It does say hot peppers. Hot peppers, pickled vegetables. So somebody read that. Check upon it.
Yeah, it's there. Hot chilies and peppers, pickled or fermented vegetables. This is again in the pure form.
Are they saying all chilies? A bit.
Hot peppers.
So what is the source? Like, is it generic search or some?
This is a chat GPT.
There will be a lot of mixed reviews.
Yeah.
Chat GPT will be highly.
It's not necessarily.
It's not like authentic.
Okay, so eating only sattvic foods. Well, sattvic foods are not very, let's say, they're not very pungent. They're not very, what you would call what? Huh? Sour.
And the hot, the spicy.
Yeah,
Not
pungent. So these chilies that are really hot, you know, we should avoid them.
Eating lemon, Maharaj, is like not tough. It is sour. Because lemon is sour. Maybe just taking a little, not too much.
So here
And,
Krishna gives the foods that are in the mode of goodness.
Okay, go ahead. Read that.
That increase duration of life.
Milk is good for you.
Juicy, fatty, wholesome, and pleasing to the heart. Foods that are too bitter, too sour, salty, hard, pungent, dry, and burning. That's more passion. Foods that are prepared more than 3 hours before being eaten. Foods that is tasteless, decomposed, putrid, and food consisting of remnants or untouchable things. Is in the mode of darkness.
So tasteless is also tasteless.
Well, that means that you can't eat nyakmum. You know what that nyakmum is? They get an animal, and then they kill it, of course, and then leave it in the sun, and then eventually this liquids come out of the animal's body, and then they boil that liquid, and they use that as a condiment, just like you have ketchup or something.
Who does that, Maharaj?
Korean sound.
Look it up, nyakmum.
Sounds like a Korean sound.
Yeah, Korean or something like that. So it's a famous condiment of food. They use like that, use it like ketchup. But it's actually the liquid that they catch from a dead animal.
Spelling
Nyakmum, I don't know.
The name is itself is very
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a very popular condiment for Far Eastern people.
yeah, it's actually apparently no, it's a traditional Vietnamese fish sauce or something.
Yeah, they'll take a fish and hang it up on a, kind of a rope, and all the dripping from that fish, they keep it, then they boil it, and they put it in a bottle and they sell it to you. It smells really bad. Have you ever gone to these Vietnamese stores?
Pretty strong
Yeah,
spice.
It's very strong smell. That's from Yak Mom. You can tell it's bad. It smells very bad. But they like it.
If they use the microwave, Maharaj, all Korean, Vietnamese, all these food,
The whole thing.
it's very hard to, because when I was in college, most of the students were Oriental. They come from Oriental places. The common microwave that we all have to use. If they use the microwave, it's very hard
It's
because of the smell.
contaminated.
Yeah, and it's the smell.
So Nyak Mom are the liquids from a dead body.
The fermented fish.
Yeah. And they smell really bad.
There you go.
You have so many ideas to make things worse and worse.
Newer flavor. Hare Krishna Maharaj, I had a separate question.
Yes.
According to Shastra, Maharaj, because there is now lesbians, gays, transgender. We know in the history they were eunuch, and you also read about them, or transgender, not transgender maybe, but like people who don't belong to one gender. You read about them in the history, and I also read in the European history also. There is a lot of examples. According to Shastra, like what is
What are they?
yeah, like I mean, how should we understand that? What is okay, what is not? What is man-made, what is nature-made?
Well, it all depends on how they're living. If they're living a sinful life, whether they're completely healthy or whether they have some congenital disease, it doesn't matter. They're sinning. So you should look at it like that. So if they're using the excuse that they have some congenital disease and that's why they have to have illicit sex or something like that, as long as they are not breaking the regulative principles, okay, fine. But if they're breaking the regulative principles, then it's demoniac. So we know what the regulative principles are, right? So if they're engaging in homosexual activities or other types of what you would call uh, uh, demoniac behaviors, then it's sinful. Like you have people, they have these seances where they augur up demons. I knew this one guy. He used to. His business was people would come and he would help them talk to their ancestors who were dead. Right. And he was a nice guy, but that was his business. And people would come to him. They wanted to speak to their relatives that were dead, So somehow or other, he did some hocus pocus nonsense, and he would augur up these ghosts, and then they would talk to their dead relatives, and that was his business, and he was doing okay. He had a good business going. Sometimes he'd say, "Well, I had a tough day today. I couldn't get this ghost to appear. But there are, in France, there's a lot of people like that. Their business is auguring up dead people to speak to their living relatives, and they go and they pay money so they can communicate with their dead relatives.
It is very popular in India as well, Maharaj.
It is, yeah.
People, they deal with all these ghosts. They can communicate and they can share. It's like a business here.
So I had a friend of mine in France. He got into that business, And one day this lady came, she's completely dressed in black. He explained this to me. And he was helping her connect with her dead relatives, right? But she looked very strange. That's what he told me. She looked very strange. And while they were sitting down, and she's sitting on one side of the table, he's sitting on the other side of the table started moving up and down. It completely freaked him out. And she was just sitting there, and she was a very freaky looking person, right? And it scared the heck out of him. And he got up and ran away, and he gave up his business. That was his business. So he gave it up because that scared him like anything. So we have to be careful, play these games. That you can augur up dead people, and you can talk to the dead people, things like that. Very dangerous. Let's say very dangerous hobby or a very dangerous way of making money. Yeah. One time I was on Sankirtan, and this is in France, and this lady, came up to me, and she looked very strange, very, very strange, And she said, "What are you doing?" So I said, and I gave her a book. No, I gave her a pamphlet, And I said, we're chanting Hare Krishna, the names of God. And she looked at me, and she looked very freaky, Then she took that pamphlet that I gave her, and she just squeezed it like this, Made it into a little ball and threw it on the ground and walked away. It was very, very frightening the way, she had this. Sometimes, a cat is afraid, right? So cat goes like that. That's exactly the way she was. She had that, like, don't touch me, And sometimes you meet people like that. They're very freaky, especially in France.
Maharaj was going like 16 to 18 hours a day, so he would meet everybody possible on the planet.
See the good, medium, and the worst.
We are in a bubble.
Protected, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you got a lot of freaks in Seattle also.
Just with the food truck, sometimes we get
Especially if you go to downtown.
yes, sometime in the dark, like in winter or something, and sometimes some weird person comes there. It's like a bit scary. how to deal with that person.
Mm.
They do a lot of,
Just give him prashadam.
they will try, but sometimes they bother the line and they are like very loud. They bother everyone in the line, and
Oh, yeah.
it becomes like a little scary sometimes.
Yeah.
So I feel
Well, because you're crazy, that's why.
someone is going crazy. Maybe they are high on something, you don't know. But it becomes like very
It's challenging.
challenging. Like I don't know what's going to happen now. Like it's becoming out of control, and we cannot tell them anything because they are like, cannot
Yeah, they're in
understand.
their own bubble. Yeah, you just have to tolerate it. Yeah. Eventually they'll go away.
Yes. Most of them
They
go
get tired of trying to scare you. Yeah.
Will
All right. Well, thank you very much. All gracious.
away.